Alright, I'm going to trace a drop of blood through the heart. I'm going to start with the vena cava. I'm using blue because this blood is deoxygenated, because it's given its oxygen. And it's going to go into the left side of the heart and up into the pulmonary artery through the lung, and there oxygen is going to diffuse into the blood cells from the lung. It's going to then travel reoxygenated, so it's full of oxygen now. It's going to travel back into the heart and get re-pumped into the aorta. And it's going to travel down. This blood is going to travel down into here. And to get a smaller view, I'm going to pull this picture up. And it's over here right now. But this blood is going to travel down this artery into a smaller vein, a smaller blood vessel type thing called an arteriole. From there, it's going to go into even smaller blood vessels called capillaries. And then from there, the blood is, the oxygen is given off, it's diffusing into the other cells that need the oxygen. So the blood has been deoxygenated, and it's going to flow, it's going to continue to flow to the venule, and then from the venule it's going to go back into a vein. So it's gonna meet back up here and travel its way back up to the inferior vena cava and repeat the process. This blood will continue to get reoxygenated until the blood cell dies.
Cells are made in the marrow inside your bones. New cells are made every second. Your bone marrow makes more than 100 million new blood cells every minute. The color of blood comes from its red blood cells, which contains iron-bearing red pigment hemoglobin. The red blood cells are workers. They carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. Humans can live for weeks without food and for days without water, but will die in a few minutes if deprived of oxygen, necessary for cell metabolism. Every cell in your body needs oxygen to live. Brain cells, bone cells, muscle cells all must have oxygen. Respiration brings oxygen to the body and sends out another gas, carbon dioxide, as a waste product. Blood is brightest when its hemoglobin is fully loaded with oxygen. The red cells, or RBCs, are also called erythrocytes. Blood also contains white blood cells, WBCs, called leukocytes, of which there are a number of different types. These are fighters. They kill germs and help you to stay strong and healthy. Platelets are the third kind of blood cells. They help to form clots and stop bleeding. These are all called formed elements, and they circulate in the blood's liquid component, blood plasma. Blood plasma is about 90% water, and the other 10% is protein, fat, glucose, and waste materials. Red blood cells live for 100 to 125 days. They are then filtered out of the bloodstream by the spleen or liver. White blood cells live from 6 to 9 days.
There are 4 valves within your heart. They are the mitral, tricuspid, aortic, and pulmonary valve. The mitral valve and the tricuspid valve lie between the atria, upper heart chambers, and the ventricles, lower heart chambers. The aortic valve and the pulmonic valve lie between the ventricles and the major blood vessels leaving the heart. As blood leaves each chamber of the heart, it passes through a valve. Your heart valves make sure that blood flows only in one direction through your heart. The valve is made of strong pieces, thin flaps called leaflets. Leaflets are supported and attached by a ring of tough fibrous tissue called the annulus. The leaflets of the mitral and tricuspid valve are also supported by tough fibrous strings called chordae tendineae. These are similar to the strings supporting a parachute. The chordae tendineae extend from the valve leaflets to small muscles called the papillary muscles, which are a part of the inside walls of the ventricles. The right and left sides of the heart work together to pump blood throughout the whole body. The 4 heart valves make sure that blood always flows freely in a forward direction, that there is no backward leakage. First, blood flows from your right and left atria into your ventricles through the open mitral and tricuspid valves. Second, when the ventricles are full and the mitral and tricuspid valves shut, this prevents blood from flowing backward into the atria while the ventricles contract or squeeze. Third, as the ventricles begin to contract, the pulmonic and aortic valves are forced open and the blood is pumped out of the ventricles through the open valves into the pulmonary artery, toward the lungs, and the aorta to the body. Fourth, when the ventricles finish contracting and begin to relax, the aortic and pulmonic valves snap shut. These valves prevent blood from flowing back into the ventricles. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. They mainly carry oxygenated blood because they came right from the lung. They're very high pressure because they're right from the pressure that the heart pushes. There are no valves, has a thick outer wall because it pumps a lot more blood, has a thin inner layer of muscles and elastic fibers, and a narrow central tube, small lumen where the blood flows through. Lumen is the inside space of a tubular structure. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessel, wall only 1 cell thick, and they're really thin. Capillaries' main function is when nutrients and waste molecules are exchanged across their thin walls, and O2 and glucose diffuse out of capillaries into the tissue fluid that surrounds the cell, and CO2 and other wastes diffuse into capillaries. And veins are where blood flows into the heart. It mostly carries deoxygenated blood because the oxygen is used up all by the time it needs to return to the heart to get reoxygenated. It's very low pressure because it's very far away from where the heart pushes, and it has valves. The thin outer wall has thin outer walls and the thin inner layer. The wide central tube has a large lumen. Most people think that the sound of a heartbeat is caused by the heart beating or contracting, but it's not. What you're hearing is the sound of 2 pairs of valves closing inside the chambers of the heart. Blood pressure is the pressure of the blood in the circulatory system, the force and rate of the heartbeat, and the diameter and elasticity of arterial walls. And the pulse is the rhythmical throbbing of arteries as blood is propelled through them, measured in milliliters of mercury. The pressure is the difference between the systolic and diastolic pressures on the pressure to change to create the pulse or pulse pressure. Pulse rate is measured in beats per minute, or BPM. It can be found on any pulse points. It's where the artery passes close to the skin, like your wrist or your neck or the inside of your thigh or something else. But the systolic pressure is the pressure exerted by blood on the walls of blood vessels when the heart is beating, and the diastolic is when the heart is relaxed. And a normal measurement for the systolic pressure is 90 to 120
It's not hard to see.
That is the most important part. The first step is to gather up oxygen. Sends blood to the lungs, back to the heart again. Next up, we'll talk about the arteries. They take blood from the heart to where it's gotta be. The biggest artery, the main transporter. Right next to the heart is called the aorta. Taking blood from the heart to the cells and back, dealing with all things vascular and cardiac. Capillaries, arteries, and veins, all I'm saying. The circulation is the name of the game. Taking blood from the heart to the cells and back, dealing with all things vascular and cardiac. Capillaries, arteries, and veins, all I'm saying. The circulation is the name of the game. From the arteries into the capillaries, all your organs and muscles become the beneficiaries of all the oxygen and nutrients they bring through very tiny vessels inside of the body tissue. And now the oxygen's gone, but first we got some carbon dioxide waste to take on, and it's into the vein and back to the heart again. And let the whole cycle start again. Taking blood from the heart to the cells and back, dealing with all things vascular and cardiac. Capillaries, arteries, and veins, all I'm saying. The circulation is the name of the game. Taking blood from the heart to the cells and back, dealing with all things vascular and cardiac. Capillaries, arteries, and veins, all I'm saying. The circulation is the name of the game. Taking blood from the heart to the cells and back, dealing with all things vascular and cardiac.